The best writing advice, and I highly recommend every author consider it, is to really focus on their pacing. Even when you've got a bunch of other things perfect and right and everything, if your pacing is off, it can really wreck a story. Make sure that your pacing is as good as it can possibly be because it's the heart of the story. That's on that one. I would say the worst piece of advice is just keep writing, which is hilarious because it is the most popular advice out there, but it misses the nuance. And as an educator, I know that it's flawed advice because if you just keep writing, there's no intentional practice behind that. And if you practice mistakes, you're going to get really good at those mistakes, but it's not necessarily going to make you a better writer. Yes, obviously, we do need to keep writing, but you really want to make sure that you're learning and intentionally practicing. Don't just blindly keep writing.
Welcome to Raising Baby Authors. I'm Cassia, your host and a brand new writer. If you feel overwhelmed and lost about this whole writing thing, you're certainly not alone. Join me while I pester my author guests for writing advice and find out how they do it. Because if they could, then why not you? It truly takes a village to raise an author, so let me share my village with you. Hello, dear listener. Thank you so much for joining me in the second season of Raising Baby Authors. Today, I'm introducing you to an amazing author and a marketer. We're going to talk a lot about marketing strategies and how to teach yourself to do marketing sustainably. So our guest today is Tanya Joy Morgan, a fantasy author and a founder of Panoptic Foundations, a digital strategy company that teaches DIY marketing to authors. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. We met on Threads and I've been reading your advice and watching your reels, and your advice is always sort of calming. It makes you feel better. It doesn't ask you to chase trends or do something quickly or get on it now, but just breathe and do things step by step. So that's why I really, really wanted to actually talk to you, because we have different authors here on the podcast and everybody has their own strategy of marketing, but a lot of people were talking about burnout, and it's writing burnout and it's also marketing burnout. So I think your kind of teaching would be really useful here. But before that, I think we need to talk about you and your background and your writing. So tell me how you started writing, how you got into this whole world.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all of that. It's actually really nice to hear that my philosophies are coming through in the publics. So I've been writing fiction for about 15 years now. It wasn't I guess as every kid, dreams of being a movie star or something, I kind of had a bug that I thought being an author would be cool, but I never really thought that I would have the creativity to come up with the ideas to actually write fiction. It was something that just was a pipe dream, I guess. And when I finally decided to jump into it, it was about 15 years ago. And honestly, it was on the heels of the popularity of Twilight that I kind of stepped back and went, I'm curious. I wonder, can I do this? Mostly because Stephanie Meyer was just a normal person. She wasn't some famous celebrity or, she was a normal house mom kind of thing. So yeah, it kind of got my curiosity and inspired me. And I dove into things, and I've been working on it for 15 years. I wrote the first book actually very quickly in 2010. It took me about 45 days. And then I self-published it in 2015. And then I unpublished it in 2016. So that was kind of how that went. And then I just spent the next 10 years doing a ton of learning and writing and research and everything. I've written it's about 7 or 8 different books and versions and whatnot, angles in my world and around my story and that. And I am now I've gone back to the original version that I wrote, which I loved, but had some structural issues. And I'm now doing a complete overhaul of that structural and developmental edit, and just doing a full rewrite to get that in shape. and to be the book I always wanted it to be. So right now I don't have any books actually published, but I am
Hmm.
hoping next year, late next year, to at least get the first book of the duology out there.
All right. So duology, that's fun. And are you planning to do it fully yourself, or you're gonna query agents?
Yeah, no, I'm going to self-publish on this one. I did go through the querying process. I did a lot of studying and research into traditional publishing, and the industry is changing so much, especially in the last few years even. And I decided that going self-publishing is definitely the route that I want to go with it.
Okay. And okay, you did mention that you were afraid that you won't have ideas. And now you're telling me you're a fantasy author. Like I don't have ideas for fantasies for sure. I have tons of ideas for real world, but never for fantasy. So how did you get this like spark the idea for your stories?
So I think like it wasn't really a decision process. I've always been immersed in fantasy. I've been drawn to fantasy on all different levels, especially anything to do with magic. And when I made the decision that I wanted to write, I just kind of did the brainstorming of like, okay, what does my book need to include? And the top three things that came to mind were elves, magic, and dragons. I'm like, okay, well, I know I need to have these, so I guess I'm writing fantasy.
Okay. I think you're my first like fully fantasy author. I had romantasy authors before, but yeah, I don't read that much fantasy, so I don't know that much about like conventions of the genre. Can you tell me something about how fantasy is like different or special from other genres and why you like writing it?
So fantasy is a huge genre for starters. There's so many different subgenres under it. And at this point, I'm honestly not even 100% sure where exactly I land in that. So even when you just sort of look at the tighter scope of whether it's low fantasy or high fantasy or epic fantasy, there's variations on those definitions. I feel like I'm probably going to fall somewhere between like not quite low fantasy, but not high fantasy either, right? So I do have larger world stuff, but it's not, higher epic fantasy is usually much larger casts. They have really huge world problems, like it's a save the world type of a
Okay.
story, if you
So
will.
high stakes then.
Yeah, really high stakes. And I mean it varies. You will get different opinions. I swear I've read probably a dozen or more different definitions of the different types of fantasy, and they all differ.
Okay.
Nobody can agree on this is the exact definition. So there is a big range. But yeah, I would say based on some of the changes that I'm seeing in the industry and in the genre, that probably not quite low fantasy because I do have bigger world building happening. And that's really what it comes down to, I think, is how deep does the world building go when it's fantasy? That's a huge part of fantasy.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. Like I also can't really come up with like a tangible explanation, but yeah, when you read high fantasy, you definitely have this whole sometimes info dumping of the world in there
Yeah.
that has to be there because yeah, you have to know the world. And there are others where you just thrown in the middle of the story and details pop up and they're not sometimes even explained that much. I'm
Yeah.
not sure which one I like more. It depends on the mood, but like yeah.
Yeah. See, and I'm not a fan of overwriting and over description kind of thing.
Hmm.
I don't need 4 pages of what the forest and trees look like to be
Oh
able to
god, no,
enjoy the
please no.
book. But it's common. It's common in really big fantasy, high and epic fantasy. They do a lot of like actual physical world description kind of stuff. And it's just not my preference. And that's all it comes down to. It's very subjective.
Yeah.
So that's why I think for me, like, I probably won't end up falling into that high fantasy category because I won't go that deep.
Hmm.
But on the other end of the spectrum, when you have low, or some people call it soft fantasy or cozy fantasy, and again, there's mixtures in there, I'm not quite that either, right? Like, I've got more than what you often see in those low and cozy kind of fantasy spaces as well.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I definitely agree on please no 3 pages on 3 descriptions. I cannot survive that. Since I'm Russian speaking, I've read a lot of Russian classic literature in school. I think I got traumatized by all the descriptions in there. We had literally lessons on stories that were just describing a field. What is interesting about that? It got interesting
Mm.
only in the very, very like high school. And I actually really kind of connected with you saying that you started writing sort of after you've read Twilight. For me, it wasn't Twilight, but like I read Twilight in Russian long, long time ago when it came out, I think. But the thing is, yeah, she's a normal person, and also the prose is not bad. It's just simple. You read it, and it's like, and you feel. Of course, it's not the case, but you feel like you could write it. You're like,
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
exactly.
I might be
Yeah,
capable.
and that was exactly it. You're right. Like it wasn't, and yeah, it's not to say that this isn't about judging other people's writing in any way, but I guess her writing felt more relatable, maybe,
Yeah,
right? Just like the prose, not even just the story part, but the way she wrote felt more relatable. Whereas some of the classics and, really big authors, really big names and stuff like that from the past, Tolkien, right? I could never even, like, no, I could not write like Tolkien. Like, there is just not a chance, right? But there was just something about the way Stephanie's writing came through that I was like, this is very normal.
yeah, it's accessible. It's deceptively simple. You think you can write it, even though you probably can't.
Until you try.
Yeah, until you try, never say that you can. But it seems like, okay, you can attempt it at least. For me, it
Yeah.
was more like discovering that romance as a genre exists and that it's good and that I like it. Because before that, I thought in order to write a book, I need to have a mystery or like a fairy tale or a fantasy. And I'm like, I'm not into those things at all. I
Hmm.
do read them, but I don't think I could come up with a thriller myself. And then when I saw romance, I'm like, whoa, I have so many ideas for those. That I can
Yeah,
do. And speaking of romance, so you do write fantasy, but you probably have some romantic subplots in your
I
book.
do.
So what's the percentage there? Do we call it the romantasy or not?
I don't think so. Again, it was a path I was considering was whether or not I should be going down that romantasy path. Again, that's a genre with a lot of different definitions to it. I
Yeah.
am more of a fade to black romantasy or romance
Hmm.
consumer. I read more closed door. I have no problem with open door as well, and some of it's done extremely well. But that was something, and I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around it as far as what is romantasy, because it seems like it's more open door. But the more I dig and the more I talk to different people, there's different opinions on that too. So I don't know. I would say, I think what my goal is that what do I want? I want a romance subplot. More of a slow burn is what will be in it. And it's probably going to spread over the two books, actually. It won't even come together in the first book completely. And it's important, but it probably won't be a 50-50 split, I don't think. And really, the first book, like, of this duology, book one is more of a coming of age story. The protagonist is 17, coming on 18, and it's about discovering her identity and who she is. It starts out where she actually doesn't know who she is, and it's a portal fantasy. So there's a lot more around personal growth and journey and family in that first book. And then more of the fantasy, like all the fantasy is still there, but more of the deeper fantasy pieces come into play in book two. So it's a build up kind of thing.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the idea if you want the listeners to know what the book is about?
It's definitely a work in progress, and I have not got a blurb for it. But I guess in a nutshell, it is about a 17-year-old girl who believes she's human. She grows up in the human world and doesn't know otherwise. Who ends up discovering that she is actually an elf with a lost legacy and destiny within her elven world. And I'm trying to think how many pieces. I guess I've already talked out there. Like she has a twin sister, but again, she doesn't know about it. At the beginning of the book, she just has no knowledge of who she is or anything. And there's reasons for that come out in the book. Her journey is discovering who she is, who she's meant to be. And it's really, I guess, a lot about a battle with inner control. It's not, she doesn't have issues with self-control and she doesn't try to control other people. But her thing is she feels the need to always be in control of herself and her emotions. And so she's very systematic and organized. Everything has a plan, everything kind of deal. And that's her flaw. That's to her
Mm-hmm.
detriment. So that plays a big part. And it's a journey of her discovering that and figuring that out and understanding the impact that has on her growth and through to the end of the books. I don't know. That's a really terrible description, but
Well, it's actually, I've listened to a lot of podcasts where authors talk and they're always asked about their books. And there are authors who starts with the plot and there are authors who start with the character. So
Mhm.
you started with your character to see that you're a kind of character first writer. So you have your
Yes.
character, you come up with their flaw, with the not fatal, what's the word? Not fatal flaw.
Yeah,
It is fatal? I
yeah,
don't
fatal
know.
flaw.
Okay, I felt like, how is it fatal? She's gonna die from it. Okay, so yeah, you come up with a character, you come up with their flaw and like with their background story, and like in general in your writing, your plotter, pantser. How do you do it?
So I have always been a pantser. That's how I wrote the first book in 45 days and why it had no plot. So I have learned a ton, like I said, over the last 10 years, and I would say I'm now a hybrid. So it's kind of an interesting process that I'm going through that is working really well for me in that I'm pantsing an outline, but it's not a structured outline. So I tried that. I did the whole thing where you have each of the, the hook, the inciting incident, the first
Mm-hmm.
plot point, the pinch point, that all the percentages. Like I went real type A on it and I had all those and trying to map them out. And I really struggled with it and even though that is my personality, like I'm a spreadsheet person, right? But I struggled. I was running into a lot of blocks. And when I was working through some stuff previously on the backstory stuff, I was doing kind of like a pantser approach, more of a stream of consciousness where I just kind of picked a point in time and went, okay, what happened? And just kind of started writing it as if I was writing it, but like I wasn't going full prose and full dialogue. Like it wasn't any of that. It was just writing out the events. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a piece of dialogue and a little scene would mix into it. And other times it was more omniscient narration. But it was just
Mm-hmm.
this, right? So I started doing that with this rewrite. I went through the whole structural thing, figured out, what I'm keeping, what I'm getting rid of, what gaps I need to fill. And then I just started writing out this sort of outline type thing. And I'm about 3,500 words on it now, and that's partway into Act Two. And I'm loving it. Like it's really helping to just see the whole picture and whatnot without the confinement of detailed outlining, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think in my case, I did very similar thing with the full length novel. I have a full, what I call draft zero. So it's not draft one. It's not readable as a book. It's not an outline because I don't have bullet points, but it's a scene by scene. This happens. He goes there. They sit down. They talk. I usually am very fast on inventing dialogue. So it's going to be a bit of narration and then like a lot of dialogue with just like a script type name line sort of
Hmm.
thing. So I have a lot of that. And so that, yeah, this was the best way, honestly, because now I haven't touched that draft in a while, but I sometimes just open Scrivener and start reading it and like, I love this one. I should really write it. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And for all the reading that I've done on, how to write and how to outline, how to structure, all that kind of stuff, I haven't seen anybody teaching this approach or explaining it in a way that it made sense to me. And so, yeah, it's interesting to hear that you've done a similar thing because I have found it to be super helpful. Like it's working.
Yeah, this is what used to be scene synopsis for me. So outline was very vague. And then I would like before writing a scene, I would write a synopsis for it. And then like the dialogue just comes there uninvited, like it just goes there. But then I decided, well, why not to do that for the whole instead of the outline? It works
Hmm.
easier in my head anyway. I cannot start with a two sentences of an outline. I need more. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it really
nice.
works. And I've heard like the draft zero kind of or whatever, or somebody actually has it as a draft one. They call it a draft one. I feel like a draft one should still be something that reads like a book, even if it's a crappy book.
Yeah, yeah, I
But I
agree.
guess it
Yeah, I
depends on
agree.
how you name it. It's up to you. You did mention that okay, you spent 10 years studying writing. So how exactly did you do it? How did you learn what kind of courses or something?
Uh, so I'm very like I do a lot of self-learning.
Hmm.
I'm not as into structured. So there weren't specific like full-on courses that I took in terms of like creative writing and this and that. A lot of it was tons of online. So looking up articles. Cam Wheeland has been a huge influence in my research and learning. All of her information is just
Yeah,
fabulous.
for sure.
Right. So through her blog and her podcast first, and then also in getting her books. And so rather than necessarily structured courses, it was more about finding the books and the resources and reading and implementation. So this actually kind of goes hand in hand. Like I learn the same way that I teach, and I'm a very hands on learner. Like I need to do the thing. I can't sit and read a nonfiction book from start to finish and be like, okay, I got the thing now. I have to implement. I need to learn a concept and then practice it and do it and put it into use. So, and it's the same way that I teach. So any courses that I create and lessons and whatnot, every single lesson has an implementation piece. So you learn the thing, you get the concept, and then do this thing, and that's going to help you understand the thing, right? So that was how I approached all of my learning around writing, was looking for in the moment learning is often what it's referred to. Again, I wouldn't just read everything about story structure. I would read about a particular piece,
Hmm.
whether I was looking at the structure in terms of the different types of like doing a 3-act or a 5-act
Hmm.
or totally different ones. I cannot say the word. I have to have it in front of me to read it. But the story structure for manga, it begins with a K and it's a
I
long
don't know.
word. So it's terrible that I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's the story structure that manga follows, and it's a 4-part
Hmm.
type of thing. But it's fantastic. It's really interesting to investigate that and see the difference between that style of story versus Western approach and things. So just learning all that, but I would take like a piece of it and learn that, right? And then
Hmm.
I would try and write stuff around that. Same with more like punctuation kind of stuff, like figuring out how do commas work. Still working on that one. But I would find the information. With Cam Whelan stuff, she was fantastic at, me being able to go in and look at specific character archetype things. And because I am very character driven, I really liked being able to drill down and look at, okay, let's study a positive character arc. What does that look like? What are all the pieces in that? And then being able to follow along with the examples. She uses Pride and Prejudice a ton for doing
Hmm.
comparisons on different angles of story, and it just helps to solidify it for me. So yeah, another one, Jed Hearn, actually, if for any fantasy writers out there, his materials on YouTube are phenomenal for learning from as well.
Okay. So I think that's a nice segue into your teaching. Actually, you did say that you learn the way you teach. So
Hmm.
let's talk about the background of your company. How did you actually get the idea to have a marketing strategy foundation?
So yeah, that one is kind of that's the whole backbone of my life. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16. I have launched and run a number of different businesses over the years, and they've all in some way combined business strategy, marketing, and education on some level. As an example, in 2004, I founded a local newspaper, and it was in a very small rural town of Alberta. And at the time, it was a print newspaper, good news only. It was fabulous. I loved it so much. Anyways, the industry was changing, and it changed very rapidly, and the entire print industry and newspaper industry was imploding on itself. And so around 2012, I took it digital. Well, in small rural Alberta, digital was really not that popular.
Hmm.
So there was a ton of small businesses that didn't know anything about digital. So I was teaching businesses what digital marketing was, how it differed from print marketing, and also how to do things like build a website and why it was important for them to have a website and all that kind of stuff. So So that's the kind of thing, and it's happened in pretty much everything that I've been involved with, where I handle the business side of things, but then I'm also teaching in some way related to it. So around, as I mentioned, my writing, and this is how the two kind of come together. So the newspaper business is what really got me into a lot of tech and digital things. My writing started around 2010, self-published in 2015, and that was all overlapping. And so the two kind of came together because as I was writing and getting involved in the author communities and everything, I was interestingly seeing so many of the same challenges around digital in the author spaces that I was seeing in the local business communities. The same questions, the same challenges, the same problems, all that kind of stuff. So that was what sparked my interest in it. And I started helping authors even back then. My focus was more on businesses back then, but I was starting to help authors. So in 2018, I actually ended up getting a job with WordPress, and that put my whole business on hold because it was a conflict of interest, because I was doing a lot of teaching people how to build websites as part of everything else I was doing. I'm working for WordPress. That was a conflict of interest. So I put everything on hold. I just kind of stopped. And through WordPress, everything just expanded, right? So again, my exposure and knowledge around digital marketing, business strategy, education. I wrote a lot of their educational materials and courses for customers and internally. Helped literally, it sounds weird, but I helped tens of thousands of customers through WordPress in the support and education departments and stuff. So tons of exposure to all of that. And I was amazed at how many of those customers were authors. So fast forward to today, I got laid off in 2024. And I thought, well, 2025 is the year. Oh, yeah, WordPress has gone through a bunch of waves of layoffs and stuff. It's the tech industry, to be honest. So that's a different story. But I thought 2025, okay, here we go. I'm going to get back into my business. I'm going to get back into my writing, and we're going to do this. And that's what brought me to where I am now. So I relaunched Panoptic Foundations with entirely focused on fiction authors. I'd done the thing in the past where I've helped businesses, I've helped nonfiction authors. I've got that background and I can help those people as well. But fiction is my passion. And the other side of it is that when I do the research, which is something I spend a lot of time doing, there's very little information out there focused on fiction authors in the marketing space. And the marketing side of fiction is different. And it's people don't talk about it in a different way. There's a lot of stuff out there where the business experts and the business marketing experts are all trying to take business philosophies around marketing and trying to get authors to understand the business terminology. They talk about funnels, they talk about target audience and lead magnets. Like, these words are terms in the business side of things. And I flip it. I everything I teach, I work on making sure that authors understand the connection and how it relates to them, especially in fiction. And I emphasize that because nonfiction is actually much more similar to business strategy and business marketing, right? Whereas fiction, I was chatting with someone and it was like, okay, so what's the problem you're solving? And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I can't figure out what, they all say that in marketing, you gotta pitch what problem you're solving. I'm like, you write fiction. Like, are you solving how to fix spaceships or cure an incurable curse? Or no, in fiction, we are not solving a problem. We're not selling a solution to a problem. We are selling an experience. And that shift in how you think about what you're selling in fiction really changes how you talk about it. And so this is a big mission for me. I'm really trying to show authors that connection. I recently wrote an article and did a YouTube video on email lists. And in that, I show how the structure of an email list and all the components of it actually connect to story structure. So in your email list ecosystem, you've got a hook, an inciting incident, the first plot point, your climax, like you've got all these pieces, and I show how they connect, and it just makes it a little bit more relatable so that it's not all this weird business jargon, confusing stuff. I would say that a big part of that comes from the number of authors I've heard make the comment that they wish they were a marketing expert or that they needed to get a marketing degree in order to be able to promote their books. And they absolutely don't. They're actually better off for not having that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
To be honest.
Why? Why though? Like I'm curious because I know a lot of authors who came from the marketing or copywriting or some like
Yeah.
similar area, and that they seem to be at least knowing what they're doing.
So when I say that, it's I guess it's a bit of a broad brush that
Mhm.
I'm using with that, because one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, and I've even seen it with some of the experts that are out there who are trying to teach or offer marketing type stuff to fiction, and they come from a business marketing background. They know their stuff and they understand the concepts. A lot of people struggle to translate it, right? So, as I've said, how you apply it to business versus how you apply it to fiction. And it is different. It is different. A lot of subject matter experts struggle with how to apply a concept to different applications in different ways. And like I said, the way you apply marketing to business is different to what works for fiction. And there's probably going to be people that want to disagree with me on that, and that's totally fine. This is why we all have our own opinions. Some of it is subjective, but I've seen it in action. And the reason why I say it's almost better that authors don't have that is how much it influences. So I even know for myself, coming from a lot of years in corporate environments, it really impacted my voice. It really changed the way I wrote things and spoke, even in my novels, like in my prose that I was writing. I had to work hard to get out of that. And when you're marketing fiction, you don't want to sound like a business. You don't want to be putting out a lot of the buy my book type messaging that is more of product marketing. You want to invite readers in. You want to show them the experience that they're going to have when they read your book. And it can be very difficult to detach yourself when you're well educated and knowledgeable in a particular way of doing things. It can be really, really hard to shift that over and do it in a different way. So that's basically what I mean when I'm saying for many authors, it's almost better that they don't have a really strong marketing background. And when you look at some of the authors out there that have done extremely well on their own, they don't have a marketing background. They're just really good at knowing their book and talking about their book in a way that builds excitement and draws readers in and makes them interested. And that's the goal. That's the big, big goal when trying to raise awareness and attract readers in.
Mhm.
Does that make
Oh,
sense?
yeah, it does. I was just thinking that one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is because what you were saying are things that are making sense and that are not really heard around too much. Because I've done as you, I'm also like an in the moment learner. I do a lot of theoretical stuff, but I was very hungry when I started writing. I was very hungry for knowledge, so I sign up for any free seminar that I could find. And so there are lots of writing seminars, but also marketing ones. And so the marketing ones could be like only of a few types. There's always something about email marketing, which is a bit closer to what you're saying, because email marketing and like the newsletter building is more about connections and building relationships with readers. So that is kind of a bit, and it's calmer. You don't go viral doing email marketing, but most of it is, yeah, how to market on TikTok, to how to do posts, 30-day challenges on Instagram, and like all stuff like that. And it does feel daunting. You feel like you have to do everything at the same
Mm.
time. And so when I kind of saw the things that you were posting, I was like, okay, maybe I can relax for a bit. Maybe I can do things a little bit slower, even though I still do the TikTok stuff. I forgot to
Uh-huh.
post my reel today. I have to do that after the recording. I do all the things just because I have half an hour a day to do them and I have all the platforms, and why not? But I did notice that in this space, I didn't really follow any courses or any people that were telling me what to do. It's more like I see what other authors are doing, and I'm just trying to kind of replicate what they're doing. And that's what everybody does. I don't see anyone
Mhm.
actually having much courses on that. So it would be super nice to kind of see your stance on, social media marketing and versus any other type of marketing, and how does social media fit into your philosophy?
A really big thing in my approach to marketing is, and especially for fiction authors, although it probably applies across the board, is it's not one piece. And this is something I see a lot because a lot of information out there, and honestly, this comes from the advice that as an entrepreneur we get. Everybody out there is telling you pick one problem, solve one specific problem, pick a niche, really get specific, right? So you see experts out there, course providers, whatever they're doing, where they get really specific on something. So they will be teaching email marketing. They'll be teaching how to grow an Instagram account, how to do TikTok. And it is very specific and one thing only. I have that broken down in my materials where I have the more specific things, but I am much more of an advocate of understanding how it all works together. It's not one thing. So if you just do social media, you are missing all kinds of different pieces in your entire digital ecosystem that kind of creates a bit of a leaky bucket, if you will. You're missing integral pieces of your infrastructure and your foundation. And so when I look at the whole, I kind of break it down as a progressive thing from absolute foundation, which is more mindset and understanding the pieces, your goals, your vision, your time management, and what you need kind of thing. And that's your foundation. Then my next step on that after that is website. Always website. Get that website, even the most simplest one-page website, get that built and in place, then connect an email list system to that, have that in place, then focus on your social. Now, most authors, they start with social. Like every author out there has social, and that's fine. And it's the easy entry point. It's
Yeah.
something we're all doing every day. But when you're sort of sitting down to actually structure it all, this is the order I recommend focusing your attention on. So keep doing your social the way you're doing it and whatever have you. That's fine. But build up your infrastructure and your foundation from the base up. And then when you get to your social component of it, you've already got all the infrastructure in place to then apply the changes that I recommend people do with their socials. And when it comes to social, it's interesting, like you mentioned, how authors often feel like they need to be everywhere. And I know that is absolutely how they feel, even though there is a ton of information out there of people saying you don't need to be everywhere. And yet it's really hard to let go of that feeling. It's like we hear the advice, you don't need to be everywhere. But when you look around, everybody else is everywhere. And if I'm only here, I'm missing the people over there. Like it's almost a FOMO kind of a feeling when you're
Yeah.
trying to get your name out there, right?
It's for sure the case. Yeah, I can tell you, I am almost everywhere. I'm not on Twitter because I don't even know how to use it anymore. But I am definitely, well, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I wasn't going to be on Facebook, but then there is a very nice romance readers group called Smuthood on Facebook, and it's very useful to be there and to recommend yourself whenever someone asks for a recommendation that looks like your book. So I have to have that. But then I post there as well because it costs me nothing to post there. Nobody can see I have 5 views on my stuff, but I still post there. I'm on YouTube as well, and now I'm on Pinterest because I learned how to connect my Instagram to Pinterest, so it just automatically goes there. And now I see I even have views on my stuff. So okay, that's nice, but I have no idea how to market there. It's just there, and you definitely feel like if it's easy to connect and you can reuse the same post or the same reel on every platform, then you really don't have a strategy anywhere concretely, but you are kind of everywhere. That's what I
Yeah.
do. I do focus on TikTok and Instagram, but it's not as focused as I would like it to be.
Which is common. And so one of the things that I teach is having accounts everywhere. Okay. So there is
Mhm.
actually benefit to that. So one of the first things I say is make sure you secure your username, the same username across as many different social platforms as you can. That's
Mhm.
important. There's SEO benefit behind that. There's passive visibility. So that concept of be everywhere in a passive way, absolutely. There's a lot of benefit behind that, and I do encourage that. Where that can become a bit of a problem is that once authors have accounts in all of these platforms, they then feel like they need to be active in all of these platforms, and you don't. So by setting up the actual socials, basically what you want to do is set up your profile with your picture, your bio, and a link. And on the platforms that allow it a pinned post, which is pretty much most of them now, set all of that up the same across all of them. And like, that's kind of step one. Just get that in place and have that everywhere, maybe with a comment of which social you are most active in. So you'll see through some of mine, I've got to do some updates on mine, but through mine, I tend to say, you'll find me most active on Threads because that is where I am active daily. Now, by active, there's two different sides of that. There's what you're postings, you're the content you're creating, but the more important side is where you're engaging, right? And those are the two pieces where authors often end up burning themselves out, or they do things and then they're not seeing traction, but they don't necessarily understand why. So they will start posting their content everywhere. And like you said, the repurposing of stuff, if it's easy and convenient and does not take any bandwidth, then there's nothing wrong with doing it. Cross-posting your stuff around is totally fine. I would recommend doing it through a scheduler for anywhere that isn't your primary social. Mostly because even the act of going into each platform and doing the process of posting, even if it's the same content, that still takes up time and energy, right? Whereas if you use a scheduler like Buffer, you can go in there, you can have your different accounts set up for a couple other ones too. Buffer, Hootsuite. Oh, I had another one, I forgot it. But Buffer and Hootsuite are two common ones. And you can go in there, you can create your post, and you can schedule it out to go automatically to multiple platforms. And then don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just let them go out to those other ones. That's a passive visibility that then truly does not take any energy from you. But pick one platform, especially at the start, only pick one to double down on and focus on. So when you're creating your content, that's the platform you're creating it for. That's, because every platform has its own culture, things that work better here versus there. So pick your primary and channel your energy into your content being created specifically for that platform, and then share it otherwhere. And then your engagement. Anytime you have available to spend inside a social platform, do it in your primary one. Don't try and go around and be in all of the other ones and whatever have you, because you're spreading yourself too thin. Social is going through a massive change on all of the platforms right now. We're hearing straight across the board how everybody is talking about low reach, low engagement, low growth, right? It's happening everywhere and to everyone. So even when we see these huge counts with hundreds of thousands of followers and whatnot, they're complaining about it too, because they see behind the scenes, they know what their growth normally looks like, and it's down. It doesn't look low to us because they're so big, but it is affecting everyone. And a big reason behind it is because the drive is back to pushing social to be social again. There's a kind of a big movement. I don't know. I can't say if it's coming from the actual platforms and tech bros themselves or if it's more audience driven kind of a thing, but it's about making connections. It's about actually talking to people. You don't do that by broadcasting. So when you're posting your content out there, if all you're doing is publishing your content and talking to your audience, that's not building relationships. Yeah. So use scheduling for everywhere else. Pick one to focus on and focus, like publish your content. You have to provide content to your audience, but put more emphasis on the engagement. And that isn't just engaging on your own posts. So yes, absolutely. If you get comments, you want to reply to those right away, which is actually surprising how many people don't do. They don't reply to their comments at all. That's bad.
That sounds
Reply to your
mean.
comments.
Why would you not reply?
Right? Yeah. So definitely reply to any comments on your own content, but also spend more time reaching out and engaging on other people's content. And especially in something like Threads, right? Threads in particular works extremely well for this. I get far more exposure from my comments on other people's content than I do even with my own content. So it's really important to get out there and engage like that. And that is, I believe, being driven at least in part by the algorithms. It might be coming from the public, demanding more of a social experience. But I do think that the algorithms are absolutely favoring much more of a social, engaging environment, which is why we're seeing some authors struggling so much when all they're doing is broadcasting content, right? They're putting out, whether it's Threads posts or Instagram or TikTok, it's kind of, like I said, happening across all of them. When you're just broadcasting content, if you don't already have a large active following, you're probably not going to get as much reach, and you're going to see your reach go down because of that lack of engagement happening. And that aside, that's if you're trying to drive the algorithm. You'll find in a lot of my materials, I actually don't advocate for trying to play the algorithm game. I recommend and advocate for and teach how to make more individual connections. It's networking is the business term. It's making friends, and no, it's not about like getting all chummy and chatting about your cats and your dogs. You can do that, but it is a more professional angle of connection where you're looking for authors, bookstagrammers, reviewers, other industry people, cover designers, editors, everybody in the space, whether they're providing services or not, everybody in the book space who is specifically relevant to your genre, to your niche, and not even just genre in general. Romance is huge, fantasy, huge. There's so many different pockets in all of these, sci-fi, right? So you want to narrow down to, okay, what is your unique flavor? Who are you, or who am I as an author? What is my vibe? And that side of things, and look for the connections that are a really good fit. And by building up that network of people, you expand your audience reach automatically because you start making good connections and you build a know, like, and trust factor with other people that are very like-minded to you. You share a lot of the same interests and beliefs and whatnot around your writing. Nothing else matters. Outside of the writing, it's not as important. It shouldn't be the focus unless that is your brand. But whatever your brand is, you want to find as much connection around that. And then by that natural, organic engagement that is not feeling forced or fake in any way, you're extending your reach. You're sharing audiences, and each of you grow. And it's not about finding influencers. I mean, sure, if you are connected and can find massive influencers that are ready to promote you out there, that's awesome. But you don't need an influencer. You need a collection of like-minded, bookish people, authors, reviewers, whatever the case may be, in the same space, and you grow together. Every one of those big influencers started at zero. And so if authors would kind of stick to people that are closer to the same level as them and strategically grow together, they'll find that they all grow a lot faster and it starts to compound over time.
Yeah, I completely agree, honestly. I've been very lucky in terms that before I published my first novella, I was a bookstagrammer for 2 years. Well, I was writing that whole time, but still, like, I haven't published anything for 2 years. And I gathered lots of people who I can count as my friends. And when I decided to make a new account for an author, which is still a decision that I'm not sure if it was good or not. Maybe it wasn't, but a lot of people followed me there. And I now have like two personalities on Instagram, which doesn't work sometimes, but I have people who are now so excited about my books, even though it was my first novella. I had people who arc read for me, who left amazing reviews, who are now doing a cover reveal for me this week, just for no, like, because they want to help me. And honestly, not every debut author has that from the beginning. I was very lucky just to have people to connect with because we were sharing book recommendations, reviews. We were bullying each other into reading the books that we liked. And we still do that. I read way less now, but we still do that. It's really, it does feel like they were my first newsletter subscribers as well. And yeah, that always kind of gives you a little bit of a boost. And then
Absolutely.
every additional person you get is like a bonus.
And I mean, The number one thing that sells books is word of mouth.
Yeah.
There is no marketing technique, strategy, paid, free, whatever. There is nothing else out there that works better than word of mouth. But getting word of mouth is extremely difficult. And a lot of people kind of feel like it's this elusive thing that you just got to hope for and that it's, if you're lucky, you'll get it. But it's not. You can absolutely get word of mouth done through a strategic process, through intentional efforts of how you handle all of your digital, and not even digital. I focus on digital. Digital is my thing, but it's a lot of the same philosophies and pieces, whether you're going to in-person events or, you know, doing local. Comes down to events. Like, what else is it when it's local and it's
Yeah.
in person? It's still a type of event, right? So,
Yeah.
but anything on a local level and in person, it's the same kind of thing. You're having conversations with people, you're making connections, you're building relationships. And you do that one person at a time. You don't do that with a post that goes viral and has a reach of 100,000 views. Who are those people? Do they know you? Do they care about you? No, they don't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I have a post now that is getting me most of my reads. I don't know what happened. It got 260,000 views for some reason over a month. I have no idea what's so special about it. It still keeps getting views and likes and some followers. But yeah, again, most of those people are not bookstagrammers. They're regular readers who some of them sign up for my newsletter. Yes, that's very nice.
Mhm.
But it's it was probably 20 to 30 people out of 250,000 who watched the video.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a strategy behind that.
Yeah.
So this is I think an important thing for authors to understand is that for anybody out there, me included, I talk about a particular approach and philosophy around how to do marketing. It will be the right fit for some authors, but there are countless ways of doing it. If going viral and chasing that viral experience is something an author wants to do it. It absolutely is a valid path. I don't believe it to be a great fit for most authors because it is also very exhausting. But there is actually a strategy behind trying to go that viral path. It is a thing you can learn and do strategically. I tend to focus more on, as you mentioned before, sustainability, something that you are capable of doing consistently for the rest of your author career, for the rest of your life. Think 10, 15, 20 years of being able to do this. And when you take that sort of rat race, fast track, try to do it all overnight approach, there are not very many human beings in this world that can maintain that for 20 years.
Hopefully, the hope is that you don't need to do it for 20 years, that you can do it for a year max and then you'll get
In
viral and
theory.
popular. But yeah, the thing is, it's just nice to know that you can do things differently when you're tired. Like you can try to chase the viral stuff and it
If
might
you want
work,
to.
but then when you get burned out and tired and you still feel guilty for not marketing, you can do things slowly and they will build up and they will work.
Well, and one of the things that I often put out there too is saying, yes, you could go that route, but do you want to burn yourself out before you take a more gentler approach to things, right? Like, is that personally, I think for most authors, that would be something that would be good to avoid is don't get to the point where you're burned out in the first place. Create a plan that works for you long term from the start. And because yes, I've said the viral path is a thing that you could pursue. There is a strategy behind it, but you have to learn it, right? Like there's a big learning curve in how to work in that sort of space. And I've seen so many authors chase going viral for years, literally years. It's like years it took them to chase virality to get that overnight success, and they never achieved it. They never actually got it, even after years of effort. And so I look at that and I go, okay, but if you were to have taken a calmer, more systematic, strategic approach to things from the start and built your foundation, one connection at a time, one reader at a time, and kept at it systematically over that time, it probably wouldn't have taken you several years to not achieve your goal. Like you would probably actually achieve your goal in 6 to 12 months, maybe 18, depending, it's going to be different for every author and,
Hmm.
their time and existing network, all that kind of stuff. But that's the approach that I teach, is for those who are like, you know what, I don't want to burn myself out. I don't want this to take over my life. I don't care about going viral. I want to build a solid, loyal readership, and I want to do it consistently and sustainably for my entire career. And so it's a much more systematic, one step at a time process that feels slow to start with, but in most cases is much faster, because as you grow, you hit that tipping point where things then start compounding. And it actually has a very similar effect to going viral, but it's often a better quality,
Hmm.
because you've built up a foundation of connections and followers who are actually relevant to you and your genre and your niche. And then that space of people starts compounding your growth, as opposed to going viral to a bunch of strangers who know nothing about you and aren't even interested in your books. But hey, you went viral, and so they share it with other people, and you still get as much reach, but the quality of those connections is much lower.
Right, right. You actually reminded me of another YouTube creator that I got just suggested randomly by the YouTube algorithm because she has only 1,000 subscribers that I'm seeing now. Like, it's not a big creator, but you have a very similar philosophy to her as well. She doesn't focuses on marketing. She focuses on the whole like author career from writing, and she budgets very well for beginner writers and stuff. And she also talks a lot about education. I just wanted to mention her. The channel's name is All Right Well. I don't know her name exactly, but
Mm.
her like lessons and videos are super nice. Like I've been watching them as a background when I was working. And yeah, she talks a lot about like how to publish the first book on a very small budget and then keep investing, how to invest in your education for the craft and everything. And really, it kind of have the same sort of sustainable, gradual kind of just build up approach. And I really find that I recently resonate with it because I think I'm getting tired with all the other stuff a little bit. But okay, I think maybe let's do a little marketing exercise because you did talk like about the niching down and finding your audience. So for you, for your business, what kind of author would be your target audience? What kind of author do you want to help?
Great question. And yes, I have done the work on this. And it's the work I teach authors to do and
Exactly.
identifying their ideal reader. So for me, I am always tempted to do what everybody says. Oh, everybody, all the authors, I'm good
No.
for all of them.
Yeah, never
I'm
do
kidding.
that.
I'm so kidding. My ideal authors are, there's beginner authors who are in the early stages of their writing. So especially before they've even published anything. If I can get authors that haven't built up bad habits yet, that's golden, right? There's so much that they can do before they've even published a book. And so yeah, that is a very strong ideal author for me. And also I should specify fiction. My focus is fiction. It applies to nonfiction. I've had nonfiction authors talk to me and ask me, but my focus is fiction. So fiction, beginners, but also people who have already started their career. They might have their debut published. They might have a 20, 30 books published, but they've stalled. Right. So they're doing a reset. So it kind of feels like they're starting new. It makes them a beginner again. So it's hard to kind of define, because authors think, oh, well, I've already written 20 books, so I'm not a beginner anymore. Yeah, you are. It's okay. When you need to do a reset and you're not getting the traction you want to get, then you want to go back to step one. So, and that's why I struggle with it, because I want to say beginners are beginner fiction authors are my target ideal audience. But I don't want authors who have written and published books to think that means it excludes them,
Mhm.
because in many cases, depending on where they are at in their journey and what they're struggling with, they actually slot into that beginner space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's
It was a very
mostly
convoluted way of describing it.
yeah, I mean, at some point you can say that because we're all joking about having no idea how to do marketing. Like every author at some point will tell you, "I'm just swimming here. I have no idea what's going on."
Hmm.
So in that case, you can say everybody, like every fiction author, but still, yeah, it's
Yeah. And no, and I would say, and that was a joke. I don't think every author is
yeah.
is my target. There are some out there that I make connections with more to have a network with. because they're doing it really well.
Mhm.
They're doing things right. And they, I could probably give them some pointers and help them out here and there, but they probably really don't need me. And that is amazing. That is awesome. So no, it's really, I guess, and it's funny because the amount of time I have spent figuring this out, and yet to concisely summarize it, the beginner, I got to figure out how to phrase being a beginner in this, because it's not just about being a new writer.
Yeah.
That's one piece of it.
Yeah, I get it. I would say like I don't think this should be your, but I would say like by my mood, when I'm tired and I feel burned out, I feel like I should go just back to the basics and not worry too much about posting every day and chasing the
Yeah.
trends and stuff. So I would say a burned out author could also be your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody who's looking to do a reset, they
Yeah.
want a new approach, right?
Hmm.
Because whether you've been doing it for 20 years or you've been doing it for 6 months, if you need a reset and you want to start from sort of ground zero again, that's where I'm a really good fit, and those authors are a really good fit for
Yeah, and
me.
if you feel like you're confused among like all the things that you could do, that's why you
Yeah.
have the word foundation in
Yeah.
your title, because yeah, you just get the basics. So yeah, that's a very nice kind of call to your future clients, any authors who are listening to this. If you really want to know the basics of marketing, and not only marketing but more like strategy for you as an author. But I wanted to ask you, you are an author and you don't have any books published yet. Do you follow your own advice? Do you talk about your story as well before you start writing it, like all the stuff that you say?
Yeah, and like every other author out there, I have absolutely been terrible at this for my author side of things. However, for about the last, I think it's about a month now, which is really when I started getting much more serious about my own writing. I've set up a schedule. I only write on Sundays. My life is such that I can't write every day. So I write every single Sunday. And at the end of every writing session, I post about my writing session on Threads. So, yes, I am practicing what I preach. I am very early stages as far as an author goes. I don't have a lot to say about my book, which is a big problem that a lot of authors have,
Mhm.
especially ones that are drafting. They're like, well, what do I say? I run into the exact same challenges and questions myself, but yes, it's there. And I only use Threads for that. I've got accounts everywhere
Mhm.
else. Every now and then I'll throw something up on one of them, but Threads is the only place that I spend my time.
Actually, just to throw an idea out there, that's how I started kind of putting the word about my books around, because I wasn't really posting anything. I just saying, oh, I was writing or whatever. I have like end of the month wrap up where I would put like I wrote this many words, but that was it. But then I
Mm,
found a community on Facebook which was posting every Friday a little snippet from their book, including a specific word. It used to be called Friday Kiss, but then they stopped it. And now it's called Friday Spark. Another author called Mara Heath, she took it over. And so now, under the hashtag Friday Spark, on Wednesday, she would give you a word. It can be any word, it's usually fairly simple. You find it in your manuscript, you choose a little or a big snippet. Some authors have huge carousels with the text. And on a Friday with this hashtag, you just post a tiny snippet from one of your WIPs, doesn't matter which one. And
mhm.
I've been doing that for like a year. And honestly, I have now people who know and love my characters from the books that won't be published for years. And that's amazing, really. And it was only
Yeah,
super scary for the first time. First time I edited that tiny little snippet for hours, just trying to make it look good. And now I'll pick this one. Let's go.
yep,
It's really nice
exactly.
way. And I found a lot of people this way as well. We kind of connect through this hashtag like every Friday.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things when it comes to like talking about your book and things, snippets and quotes are absolutely a piece of that. That's something authors should be including. But also, there is so much information about your characters, your world, your research that you can share that aren't spoilers either.
Yeah.
You can talk about how you came up with a particular character, or just talk about a quirk that that character has, or what some off-page special talent they has that never comes up in the book. Like, there's so many different things that you can do. I've actually got a content ideas guide on my website that digs into that. It gives a bunch of different ideas and how to use them and how to pivot them and customize them, all that kind of stuff for that very reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now that you mentioned the content guide, I think I can ask about where to find you, the website, what kind of services you offer as well, courses, anything you can say about about Panoptic Foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. So panopticfoundations.com is the website, and that's my hub. That's what I teach. So everything should be in your website. So I highly recommend just kind of starting from there. You can get to all of my socials from there. Threads is where I spend most of my time. So if you just want to go straight to Threads, that works too. In my website, you will find resources, articles, and courses, and everything is still building out. I'm constantly adding new stuff, but I do have a couple of, low cost PDFs for like the content ideas guide and also a website planner. I also offer pieces of my main program. So I've got one main program that's called the Fiction Author's Path to Presence. Enrollment is at different times of the year. It's not currently always open. So I don't know where I'll be when this airs. I don't know if it'll be open or not, right?
Well, go check on the website, anyone who's listening, and check out the opening dates then.
Yeah, that's the best ways. Thank you. So the Fiction Author's Path to Presence is the main program that covers everything. It is all inclusive from A to Z, foundation, website, email, social, content, strategy, monetization, the whole bit. I've also started breaking out pieces of that. So I've got a smaller course that is Mindset and Digital Foundations that authors can take just as a standalone course where that just helps them build their foundation and infrastructure to get them a solid foundation. I have said that word too many times. And the other one I've got right is the Build Your Author website. And that covers from creating a one-page website through to extending it into a multi-page website. And again, isolated course, you can just sort of take that on your own. From there, I also offer laser coaching where you can work with me one-on-one. And then one of the things I recommend every author, whether you want to work with me or not, go in and grab my online presence self-audit. It's a free reader magnet. That's what that is. But I've gotten really great feedback on it. And it's just a fantastic tool to do an assessment of all your pieces. It gives you a really great overview of where you're at, what the gaps are, what your next step should be. It doesn't get into how to do all of the things, but it really gives you a clear overview picture of all your pieces. And then from there, the other thing I've got is a public perception audit, where I will go through all of your digital spaces and everything that you've got. I've got a questionnaire form you fill out and give me all the goods, give you back what the public perception of your online presence is. It can be very different from what we think we're putting out there. We have a vision, an idea of our own brand, but that's not necessarily how the public sees what we're saying. And so having a third party, arm's length person look at your stuff can really offer a nice objective overview of what you're saying to the public. So
Okay.
that's the other thing.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I really advise everyone who's listening just to go to a website and check it out. And I would even recommend looking into like one-on-one coaching sessions. The thing is, whenever I find like a good person to listen to, like a podcast or a YouTuber whoever teaches things and I really like what they're saying, by the time I'm like ready to, okay, maybe book a session with them, they are getting too big. They're starting to have group courses and don't work one-on-one anymore. And then you just lose the opportunity.
That is very true. That
Yeah,
is very true.
Yeah, at some point I really wanted to book a session or book like editing services from Savannah Gilbo, and well, for like a couple of years I can't already. It was she's got too big, so
Yeah. Well, I honestly I can't say that I would be sad if that happened for me as well, but
obviously it wouldn't be sad for you, but like yeah, I'll be probably how we say it Russian biting my elbows because I missed it. Well, okay. And I think I did the things in order because I didn't ask the main question that I cannot just, leave without because it's a writing podcast. So best and or worst writing advice that you can give. Well, don't give the worst one, but like
no, but that I can give or that I've received?
That you've heard. Yeah, whichever resonates with you.
So for the best writing advice, I think the thing that resonates the most with me, and I highly recommend every author consider it, is to really focus on their pacing. The pacing of their story is really the heart of the story. And even when you've got a bunch of other things perfect and right and everything, if your pacing is off, it can really wreck a story. So yes, best advice, make sure that your pacing is as good as it can possibly be because it's the heart of the story. That's on that one. I would say the worst piece of advice that I've received and that I would not give to others is just keep writing, which is hilarious because it is the most popular advice out there, but it misses the nuance. And as an educator, I know that it's flawed advice because if you just keep writing, there's no intentional practice behind that. And if you practice mistakes, you're going to get really good at those mistakes, but it's not necessarily going to make you a better writer. So I would say, yes, obviously we do need to keep writing and constantly writing, but be very intentional about it and learn from the process. It's not just practice makes perfect because practice can make mistakes perfect. So you really want to make sure that you're learning and intentionally practicing with that. Don't just blindly keep writing.
This one, I mean, pacing wise, I've never heard this as the best advice. So that would be very interesting. Actually, I wish we had more time because pacing is something that can be very mysterious to authors. Like what is pacing?
I'll find the YouTube link for you and you can
Yeah.
have a look at it. And if you want to include it,
Definitely.
I was really impressed with her explanation.
Yeah, because I've received a comment that I have very fast paced book, so it's very good pacing. But and I know that you read it fast, but how exactly that happened, I don't really know. Just in terms of me trying to make things short because that's a novella. Yeah, and Just Right, I think has been equally in the best and worst category on this podcast. Like lots of authors say it helps them a lot, and lots of authors say that it's too general. You cannot just take it as it is. So yeah, okay, that was very interesting. I really enjoyed this conversation so much. Thank you for actually it was supposed to be thank you so much for joining me today, but I don't know why I'm confusing words. It's 9:20 in the evening.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And I hope to see you again because this was just the tip of the iceberg that I wanted to talk to you about. I was planning to shamelessly use you for marketing advice, but I didn't even have time to do that. Okay.
And that's probably partially my fault because I can get a little bit, impassioned about what I'm talking about.
But that's great. That's great. That gave so much useful information to our listeners. So I'm hoping I'm going to get to this episode as soon as possible because I need to put it out. I've been really, really late on things lately. So I need to get back. Burnout. Hello, burnout. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I absolutely loved it. And by all means, we can do this again. We can do it off screen. We can do actual recordings, whatever you like, but I'd be more than happy to dig in and you can shamelessly utilize my brain for some answers specific to your stuff. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much for joining and see you next time.
Thank you.
If you like what you hear so far, please consider subscribing and tune in for the next episode. If you have burning questions about writing you'd like to have answered, head to my Instagram page at kkalbabooks and leave me a message. Or use my email k.k.alba.books@gmail.com. If you'd like your favorite author to answer your question on my show, again, head to my Instagram or email me to let me know which author you'd like me to invite, and I'll try to get over my anxiety and do it. On the other hand, if you're an author who's published at least one book, traditional or indie, and you'd like to become a guest, well, you know what to do by now. Message me and let's get to know each other.